Welcome to Two Square German parliamentary election. It's February 1st, 2025, and we are 22 days away from Germany's federal election day on February 23rd. Latest polling data reflects shifting voter sentiment, but before we will cover this, we first see the news that may affect the upcoming election. On Tuesday, January 29, a motion by CDU-CSU was approved with help of the AfD, a far-right party. It's the first time a motion was approved with support from a far-right party in Germany after 1945. Other parties criticized Union Chancellor's candidate Friedrich Merz for being open to votes from AfD and piercing the so-called Brandmauer, in other words, the firewall. The motion was to vote on a law to tighten the asylum laws and migration. It was a reaction after the knife attack in Aschaffenburg with 2 casualties. This affects CDU, CSU, and AfD and affects the topics immigration and the far right. On Friday, January 31, 2 days after the motion, German Bundestag, the parliament, voted on the proposed law and didn't get the necessary number of votes to get passed. 12 union members didn't vote. 2 FDP members voted against the law, 5 abstained, and 16 FDP members didn't vote. This affects CDU, CSU, and AfD and affects the topics immigration and the far right. Then Hamas and Israel are releasing hostages and prisoners in accordance with the ceasefire both parties agreed on recently. Among the hostages released by Hamas were 2 German Israelis. This affects the issue of foreign policy. And now to numbers. The CDU-CSU remains the leading party, but the AfD has gained momentum while smaller parties continue to struggle. Recent polling trends from January 24th to February 1 of 1st, 2025 show the following. CDU, CSU 30%, stable, slight fluctuations. SPD is 70%, small recovery from previous lows. AfD 22%. Currently, it would be the biggest opposition party. Gradual rise over the past weeks. The Greens or Bündnis 90 Die Grüne 12%, slight decline. FDP 4% at the risk of missing the 5% threshold. BSW 6%, recovering slightly after recent scandals. Linker 4%, struggling to stay relevant, and others 5%. These numbers indicate a stable CDU-CSU lead, but with no clear majority possible without coalition building. The AfD's growth to 22% reinforces its position as the second strongest party, with SPD stabilizing but remaining weak compared to past elections. And so we have key polling developments. CDU-CSU stabilization despite AfD pressure. The CDU-CSU is holding steady around 30%, showing no significant losses despite the recent controversies surrounding its asylum motion vote with AfD's support. However, early polling in November 2024 showed CDU-CSU peaking at 37%, indicating a longer-term decline. AfD gains and surpasses 20%. The AfD has risen from 19% in mid-January to 22%, marking its highest polling levels in weeks. The asylum debate and CDU-CSU's cooperation with AfD may have played a role in this increase. SPD remains weak but shows slight recovery. The AfD has climbed from 50% on January 2024 January 24 to 70%, but this remains far below its 2021 election results. The party continues to struggle in the face of CDU and CSU's dominance and AfD's rise. The Greens are declining in support. The Greens have dropped to 12%, continuing a downward trend from previous month, where they were polling closer to 14 and 15%. Economic concerns and the government's handling of environmental policies may be a factor in this decline, but also, of course, immigration and the whole economic situation and handling of the government in which the Green Party is involved. Then, FDP and BSW are on edge. The FDP is at risk hovering at 4% below the critical 5% threshold, like the Linke. And the BSW, Bündnisser Wagenknecht, which had faced corruption allegations in Thuringia, has rebounded slightly, now polling at 6%, but its long-term viability remains uncertain. Let's go to the aggregated numbers. Aggregated polling data over the past 2 months confirms these trends. CDU-CSU has lost ground from its December high of 32.4%, but remains the strongest party. AfD's steady increase is visible from 17.9% in early December to 22% now. SPD has slightly improved since December, but remains far behind its historical strength. The Greens and FDP are declining, with FDP below the 5% threshold. So this confirms what we have already seen in the polls. The numbers suggest that while CDU-CSU has remained stable, AfD is continuing to benefit from the immigration debate, while the SPD is struggling to regain ground. Now we will look at some regional polling insights. Schleswig-Holstein remains a stronghold for the CDU, with the party polling at 39%, significantly ahead of its other competitors. The SPD, once a dominant force in the state, has fallen to 16%, continuing its national continuing its decline from previous elections. The Greens, who had performed well in past regional and European elections, are now at 13%, a slight drop compared to 2024. The AfD, while rising nationally, remains weaker in Schleswig-Holstein, polling at 14%. This is significantly below its national average and highlights the party's difficulties in gaining traction in Germany's northern states and western states. Meanwhile, the FDP is in serious danger of missing the 5% threshold. Currently sitting at just 4%, the BSW has not gained much support here, reaching only 3%. Compared to past elections, the CDU has increased its lead, benefiting from SPD struggles. The AfD remains weaker than in the East. The AfD remains weaker than in the East, but has made slight gains compared to earlier state elections. The Greens, while still competitive, have lost momentum. Then let's look at Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Here, the AfD is becoming the leading party. In stark contrast to Schleswig-Holstein, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern has emerged as an AfD stronghold, with the party leading at 31%. This represents a significant increase from its performance in previous Bundestag and state elections. The CDU, which has traditionally been competitive in the region, lags behind at 21%, while the SPD has fallen even further to just 15%. The BSW, which has struggled nationally, is performing better in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, reaching 11%. This suggests the party is attracting left-leaning voters disillusioned with the SPD and the Linke. Meanwhile, the Greens remain weak in the region, polling at just 8%, while the Linke is at just 6%. This shift highlights the AfD's continued rise in eastern Germany, where it is increasingly positioning itself as a dominant force. The SPD's steep decline reflects its ongoing difficulties in maintaining voter support outside its traditional strongholds. The CDU, while stronger than the SPD, remains far behind the AfD. Last but not least, we also have Berlin. CDU and Greens neck and neck, SPD in free fall. Berlin, Germany's capital, presents a very different political landscape. The CDU has surged in the capital, now polling at 24%, making it the leading party in a city where it has historically struggled. The Greens remain close behind at 22%, making this a highly competitive race. The SPD, once a dominant force, Just remember Klaus Wowereit, a very popular mayor in the city of Berlin, has collapsed to just 13%, less than half of its 2021 Bundestag election result. The AfD has made notable gains in Berlin, now polling at 17%, reflecting its broader national rise. Meanwhile, the BSW has secured 7%, showing more strength here than in Western Germany. Die Linke is struggling in the capital, reaching just 5%, far below its historical performance in Berlin and surprisingly low for a left party in a more left-leaning city. The shift in Berlin demonstrates the SPD's severe decline in urban areas where it once held significant influence. The CDU's rise suggests a change in voter preference, particularly among moderates and conservatives dissatisfied with the current government. The Greens remain a strong contender, though they have lost some support compared to previous elections. So, and now we want to see if recent debate affects the polls in comparison of polls and popularity numbers. So, first of all, as the election nears, the chancellor preference race has tightened, with recent political developments impacting public perception of key leaders. The shift is largely attributed to the heated debate surrounding CDU-CSU's proposed asylum law and Friedrich Merz's controversial collaboration with the AfD votes in the Bundestag motion on January 29. The backlash from this move has affected favorability ratings, making this a crucial moment in the election campaign. So, what you can see here in the numbers, there's, if any, a slight gain for CDU-CSU. More beneficial it was for the AfD, and then also there was a slump for the SPD, but then they recovered. It was worse for the Greens, who are now below what they have had before everything erupted. Then the BSW is gaining ground, and fewer people are considering the Linker and the FDP, as you can see here. So, chancellor preferences. Friedrich Merz of the CDU-CSU has been the most preferred candidate for chancellor, but his numbers have dropped following the asylum law debate in a head-to-head matchup against Olaf Scholz, which we will see later. Moment. The race is now tied at 45% each, making a shift from Merz's previous lead. Okay, so that we have the numbers here, you can see it here. There you can see the development. Against Robert Habeck of the Greens, Merz still leads, but with a smaller margin, now at 48 to 42% compared to wider gaps in early January. This suggests some voter hesitation following the CDU-CSU's recent moves. Meanwhile, Alice Weidel from the AfD continues to have strong support from AfD voters, but remains highly polarizing overall. A matchup between Merz and Weidel shows that Merz could win, demonstrating that even AfD-leaning voters will prefer a more mainstream conservative figure. Then we also want to see leader favorability, impact of the asylum law debate. Leader favorability ratings have been volatile due to the asylum debate and CDU-CSU's handling of the issue. Friedrich Merz's favorability score dropped from minus 0.3 to minus 0.6 in comparison to Olaf Scholz, who also lost, but not as big as Friedrich Merz. And Scholz ratings were generally very low. Also lost or losing ratings have a drop in the ratings was Robert Habeck and Alice Weidel. Alice Weidel here in this case is the least popular politician. The most popular politician is Robert Habeck, Germany's Minister of Economy, but even he is struggling with the ratings. So at the moment we can see a slight drop for everybody, but it is not um, a significant sign that we can say that the debate already had a fallout. So we need to follow the numbers over the next days and weeks and see if it will later have an effect on the outcome at the ballots. And then I have a tool recommendation for you. Everybody knows, I guess, the Valomat. But today we're talking about something else, completely different. We're talking about Realomat. Unlike Valomat, which compares party manifestos, Realomat is based on actual voting records in the Bundestag. It analyzes how parties voted on key issues. It matches users with those whose real-world decisions align most closely with their views. This tool provides a data-driven approach to voter guidance, particularly useful in an election where party rhetoric and actual parliamentary actions may differ. Voters can try Realomat at realomat.de to see which party aligns most with their political stance. However, it doesn't replace that you make your own decision. You and only you should decide what you vote. Realomat and Valomat will only give you a recommendation or tell you what is likely representing your views, but in the end, you decide. Then we have the next and the last elections episodes. Pardon. So first of all, on the weekend of February 8 and February 9, there will be a short episode because I was invited to an event and I looked at I will create an episode, but it will be a short one because I will not have the time to create um, an episode and have all the data by my hands. Yeah, and then in the weekend before the election, we will talk about the election forecast for what we have gathered all the data. Then on election weekend, there will be no episode. But the weekend after the election, March 1st and March 2nd, we will review and analyze the election and see if the forecast that we had was correct. And again, if you don't know me, this is me, Christian Crump, Georgia Tech dropout, EMBA, social science bachelor, and several certificates from Corporate Finance Institute in Canada. Thank you for watching. If you like, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it, and I'm definitely cheering about every new subscriber. Thank you.